October 19th, would you believe it, already moving deep into the fourth quarter. Oil prices gripping on by their fingertips above $90 a barrel, having dropped below yesterday ahead of it would appear the announcement by the US government that indeed they would be releasing more oil from the SPR. Let's go to Kuwait. Sarah Akbar, Chairperson and CEO of Oilserve Kuwait and non-executive director at Petrofac. Sarah, welcome back to the table. I'm really keen to get your views on this sort of what appears to be a growing war of words between particularly the US and Saudi Arabia on this OPEC plus cut. But clearly Saudi Arabia has rallied all of its allies in OPEC plus to make their supporting statements, including Kuwait. Your thoughts on this situation?
So, good morning, Sean.
Good morning
to everybody. It's been a while since I joined, but
yes,
glad to be here.
Everybody.
So the situation, I think, as you see, without the interference from OPEC Plus, the prices was slipping down, and they can see, even if you see at all the forecasts from EIA as well, they are forecasting less demand next year. So ahead of that, I think OPEC decided that let's go and try to keep a base for the price they're targeting. I mean, they are saying we are not targeting 90, but looks like they want 90 to be the floor, simply because they have all, benefited from the cycle, and they know that this is probably the last cycle they will see an oil price, and they have to maximize their revenues. They are committed to big programs and development in all of these countries. So I believe the most important element for them is truly economic, although, I cannot discount that there is a political element to this. I mean, I see the fury in the US, and they believe this is interfering with the US midterm elections. And I mean, this was never the intention, but, the intention is to keep their economies, their own economics working for their countries, and it is the time for them to be making the surplus money they need for the development of these countries. So the driver is economic, but I don't just discount the other impacts, the political impacts that this have on the. Yeah.
Let's go to Australia and Peter Maguire, CEO of XM Australia. Peter, this is a big week in your neck of the woods and perhaps the whole world on the China's Communist Party Congress. Your thoughts a few days in now with the announcements that have been made, fairly robust, muscular language from the president of China. Your general takeaways.
Well, good morning, Sean. Good morning, fellow panelists. Greetings from Sydney. Yeah, a couple of things, Sean. First off, if you look from a commercial standpoint, it's the corporate side as far as share buyback. So that's just something to put out there, and it's going to be better from a corporate standpoint. And we need to take on mindset as far as how suppressed in the last 2 years that CSI 300's gone from 5,800 to 3,700. So it's certainly not a rosy time for equities. Just parking that. As far as the Congress, a number of key points. First point is, and it really hit us between the eyes, I think the point of view that Taiwan is there in a lot of ways for the taking. They've satisfied their appetite with Hong Kong. They've parked that one. And now the next move forward is how they're going to move forward with Taiwan. They're not going to sit on their hands by the sounds of things, Sean. I don't really want to put too many geopolitical words out there, but yes, it's a little unsettling, but that seems to be the way that China's going to move forward.
Yeah, it is. It is certainly a little unsettling, and I would have thought that I suppose, like certain elections in the West, you say, "Oh, that's part of the electioneering." I think Jamie just dropped off there. I don't know if he's still on the call. His line seemed to go down. But the question vis-a-vis, where is there an intersection point, do you think, Peter, in terms of the Chinese Congress and its politics and its economics, i.e. I think the biggest one being the sort of commitment to the zero COVID policy. that there is an intersect with the rest of the global economic performance at the moment? Or is everything completely baked in from China into the financial markets, into the oil markets?
Well, a couple of things. First off, if you're looking at just on Bloomberg, just hit up Beijing COVID cases at 4-month high as top party leaders meet. So that's troubling considering you're moving into I've been in Beijing in November and December and it's frightfully cold. So that's not a good sign if you've got that ratcheting up as far as 4-month highs. And it's probably not unusual considering you're entering that winter season. So that's going to be hard to manage. Secondly, you've got to understand where the yuan is, and we've gone from 6.4 against the US dollar to 7.2. So the continual weakness across that fabric as far as the currency and the economy is languished. I mean, you know, any market that's down so dramatically, it certainly hasn't bounced like other major markets have, like the US, for example. It's a long way from its highs, and it's going to be a tough time getting momentum moving forward from here, I'd say, Sean.
Jamie, I believe your camera has just gone off, but you are with us. I wanted to get your thoughts on the OPEC Plus decision and this sort of breakdown in what seems to be Middle East, US West relations, storm in a teacup, or something a bit more significant?
Hi, Sean. Yes, still here. Sorry about that. I'm not sure what's up with the camera. A bit of a floating voice now. Yeah, as you say, really getting quite turbulent now with the OPEC-US relations in particular. Saudi Arabia, the US both joining in with some pretty inflammatory comments aimed at particular sore spots, you know, hinting at the US trying to influence midterms from the Saudi perspective, and then the US hitting back, trying to kind of widen some cracks within the OPEC Plus grouping, it seemed, by suggesting that there was dissent in the room and that the Saudis pressured the others. Certainly from conversations that I've had with delegates, they've vehemently denied that this was the case at all. Are they all in line with this? Well, you know, different governments have different perspectives. Some of them probably weren't quite so bullish on the need for cuts, given the amount of uncertainty, but they pulled together unified decision in the room, that's for sure. It's interesting what we're seeing now with the US approach to the SPR. Certainly that strategy of releasing significant volumes this year has paid off. That helped push prices below $100 a barrel. Renewed SPR releases, is that the best strategy now? I'm not so sure about that. It's a very different environment doing it now, with prices hovering around 90 to earlier in the year when they're around 120. It's a bit of a, not quite a nuclear option, but it's a bit of a last resort issue. Do you want to use all your firepower now, given that there's the potential for further Russian volumes to come off the table after December 5th? That's a question that needs to be asked. So for now, it's jawboning when it comes to the SPR. That's helping lower prices. Further down the line, if they do actually go ahead with SPR releases, we're at 400 million barrels now. There's probably a point where that switches from being a bearish move to being a bullish move, with people thinking, well, hang on, where's the strategic stockpile gone? Yeah,
it's sort of like the idle capacity that no longer exists. It sort of becomes the more you increase, the more it becomes a negative bullish for the prices. Sarah, on that point, OPEC announced, as we was discussing, and a fairly muscular 2 million barrel a day quota cut. And I wanted to get your sense about what that translates to, will translate to. Obviously, the 1st of November that it commences, but coming at a time when, as far as I can see across the Gulf region, all producers are increasing capacity as much as possible. The last thing they're thinking about doing right now is cutting.
Yes. So the reality of the cuts, as you know, the actual quota in OPEC is not fully achieved. There is a shortage of something like 800,000 barrels a day from the actual quota. So the reality of the 2 million, it's more like cutting probably 800 to 900,000 barrels, and that's it, because the balance was never there, you know. So politically speaking, 2 million is a big number, as you know, as you can see, but the reality, it's really something like 800, 900 that will come mainly from 4 or 5 countries. One of them, Iraq, said, I can't do it. Although, you know, they said, okay, we will go ahead with the cut, but the reality, they cannot cut anything from Iraq. So I don't know. I'm sure there will be, going forward, a different kind of commitment to the cut. If you remember, 3 years ago, whenever they had cut, they never committed to the cut and people were cheating around and so on. I think at this point in time, this will come back because, as you said, people have invested in increasing capacity, although not much being added really, because as you know, the cycle of investment takes time before you can really add production. So the production, the investments they are already making now will not show up except towards the end of 23 probably. But anyhow,
if you take the four countries, the GCC countries that are involved here, Saudi, Kuwait, UAE, and Oman, I doubt Oman is going to be making any cuts. Kuwait, your expectation?
Probably, yeah, Kuwait can do because we were talking about this before we started the session. When we commit, and that's it. So we apply what we commit, we stick to the word, and we just go ahead. So Kuwait have the flexibility to cut, and we have, in our budget currently, we have surplus, we have this. So we are really not in a position to say, no, we cannot commit because we have issues or whatever. So Kuwait will definitely commit. Saudi will commit because they are driving this. I think the UAE, if you remember, before this cut, they were the ones who were really resisting any cuts. As a matter of fact, at a certain point in time, they came out and they said, no, this was not fair. Our quota was not right and so on. And they really invested in adding production. So it will be tough a little bit for the UAE, but I think in the spirit of trying to keep the momentum and the movement, they may do some cut, but I believe none of the other OPEC countries will cut anything.
The other part for the UAE and others might be, again, the political optics of all of this is what has created this fuss. Maybe the economics it can be defended given the global economic outlook, but the optics, the timing is very problematic. Peter, I wanted to talk to you this morning a little bit about inflation and interest rates, get your thoughts there, because it feels like we've come out of, speaking of temporary, we lived with temporary last year, that the inflation was temporary. And then this year, we've lived mostly with the idea that inflation could be muscled, it could be wrestled down to the ground with these bionic interest rate hikes that we've seen by the Fed. But I think we've come out of that. It's like we've just come out of the cold shower of realization of, oh my goodness, these bionic interest rates are not going to take these inflation rates down. And this sort of, this is kind of the new dawn in a way, that we could be with bionic rates for a while. Your thoughts of that sort of moment of realization of higher rates for longer?
Sean, I finish a shower each day, just to let you know, with a cold shower. When I'm at the Kopinski for the OPEC meetings in December, you hit the cold shower there and it's about 2 degrees Celsius. And I tell you what, it's cold. So that's what it's like this morning. That UK market, that UK CPI just dropped 10.1%. Food prices rose 14.8% from a year ago. Producer prices 15.9% up. Raw materials rose 20%, also all above expectation. And I'm just looking through some notes Mohammed El-Arian mentioned as far as that city forecast. Are we going to see, this is for UK, are we going to see 28? Are we going to see 18% as the headline sometime in 23? So that's the point that we sit here today, Sean. Is 10 a high number for the UK if El-Arian and Citi say that 18 is the number? And God help us if 18 is achieved, because where would interest rates have to be, my dear friend?
They would have to be like we saw in the 1980s, which is the ultimate sort of parallel that is worth getting your head around, that in the 1980s, to get inflation down, the rates had to go above inflation, not
that's right.
Sort of come up from below it and suck it down. They had to go above it and push it down, and that was quite a massive task. So, if indeed the question then becomes, does the does the Federal the Reserve of the US and the central bank governors elsewhere have the stomach, or do we all have the ability to absorb that? That is the next question, it seems, at this time. And not that we have.
You could absorb it at $30 crude, but you can't absorb it at $100 crude, Sean, because the cost to the consumer, no matter where, are too great. And that's what we're all feeling across the planet. If you ask anyone of any age, food prices, what's happening with utility bills, you've got family in the UK, the stories must be horrendous from what I'm hearing there, and we're not even in winter yet. So, you know, I look forward to this show together, and I'm going to make a point of it. The 19th of December will be an interesting time to look in retrospect over that 2-month window.
Yeah. Jamie, the big price point of great pain, if you like, at the moment on the energy complex side is diesel, trading at $200 in the US. This has suddenly raced back to being a major problem. Price aside, even supply could be crunched. Your thoughts of where diesel is going?
Diesel is a painful story, as you rightly point out, Sean. Inventories are low in Europe, they're low in the US. Often, you know, as an arbitrage opens up for US diesel to flow into Europe, well, that's something that we're not seeing at the moment because prices are so high in the US. And Mr. Biden over there is, you know, speculating about even an export ban on products, which would just blow up the market entirely. I mean, that would be a serious problem for the US's European allies. We're starting to see some diesel being pulled into Europe from the Middle East, more so than usual. Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, the UAE, all flowing into Europe now. Looking ahead, in Kuwait, the Al Zour refinery is meant to be starting operations soon. They've introduced crude into the first CDU, so that could be a big development. But obviously, it takes time to ramp up a refinery. So big flows anywhere, not until 2023, certainly. In Saudi Arabia as well, new capacity at the Jazan refinery. Everybody's waiting for that second CDU to start up and for some of the secondary units so that, again, Saudi Arabia can pump up diesel exports further. And then next year as well in Oman, the Duqm refinery, OQ8, that's meant to start up in Q1. So there are additional sources of diesel, but right now, I think we're looking at spreads blowing out even further.
Sarah, I wanted to get your thoughts as well about the sort of political situation vis-a-vis US Gulf relations. I mean, clearly they're under stress with Saudi Arabia. Is this something that the wider GCC should be concerned about? Of course, Kuwait has a special historical relationship with the US in terms of how they supported your security 30 odd years ago. I'm just wondering, are we at a tipping point to a new era, or is this just kind of a noisier version of business as usual?
Well, this is a very tough question.
Well, it's the question everybody's trying to answer at the moment.
It's a very tough question for everyone because, you know, the last week, Mohammed bin Zayed visited Putin, and they showed extraordinary intimacy and relationship. And so what came out from that, and second day after that, Mohammed bin Salman, the prince, came out and he said, we will try our best to find a peaceful resolution for the Russian-Ukrainian kind of war. So the way the GCC is putting their effort is to try to make peace everywhere, even with the US. And so they are balancing their political moves with the economic moves that happen. Genuinely, everybody in the GCC is concerned about the development and the relationship between Saudi and between the US. And, you know, at the end of the day, we are, as far as political front or a coalition, we are a coalition. GCC is a coalition. It is very intertwined. We have so many, it's just not agreement. It's just same people, we are one unit. And whatever happens to the unit, we all share. And that's why everybody, we cannot say, oh, Kuwait, we have nothing to do with this. Or the UAE say, oh, we have nothing to do. No, we are all in it. and we have to do it together. And that's why you will see some orchestrated efforts between the various GCC playing various parts in trying to cool down this, issue between the US and Saudi, because genuinely it is not only Saudi. Everybody was in OPEC Plus and everybody take the decision together, regardless if they come and say afterwards, oh, we were pushed to do this or that. You took the decision jointly to cut production in order to safeguard your economic interest. You have all the right to do so, and we should all defend it together. So we are concerned, but like you see now, there are various elements playing various tactics in order to cool off this and try to find the best way going forward. But truly, this is, quote unquote, uncertainty, big uncertainty, and everybody is, we are thinking jointly how to do things together rather than each one doing his own bit.
Yeah, let's get this survey question this morning, looking at where this $90 floor can hold. Will OPEC Plus have to cut further to hold $90 floor through Q1? I mean, clearly they've got it now. Ultimately, there's nothing that is going to remove the average price of Brent being at $100 a barrel this year. We're already trading December contracts and deliveries into the new year. So from an oil markets point of view, we're kind of already in 23. But nonetheless, the front month is where it is. $90 is holding just about. But like we saw before the recent action, oil prices had rallied and then they came down and then oil's going back up again. And now they're feeling like they're on a downward draft again. And the question is today whether indeed that $90 can hold without further action in the first quarter. Jamie, what about things in Europe? All things, obviously, these Iranian drones flying over Kiev, the sort of uncertainty vis-a-vis the alliance. Do you think we're locked into a embargo from the European Union on December 5th?
I think that embargo has to go ahead now. Yeah, absolutely. There's so much political capital that has gone into getting behind this unity, solidarity. Everybody cuts imports of seaborne crude from 5th of December and then products from 5th of February. It's very difficult to see politicians being able to row back on it. The question is compliance, I guess. We're so used to talking about OPEC compliance and who's going to cut here, who's going to cut there. Now we're going to see who's going to hold the line when it comes to imports of Russian crude. There could be some fragility within that, the usual players. And some countries have exemptions as well. I believe like Hungary is allowed to obviously continue taking crude through the pipeline, that sort of thing. But yeah, I think that's going to go ahead, absolutely. So then in terms of Europe, we're in the question of, well, where's that Russian crude going to go to? The usual suspects of India, China, emerging as well, Sri Lanka taking little bits here and there. That's an interesting one because they've typically run their refineries on Murban crude from the UAE. So then how much of that Russian crude gets shut in rather than displaced? And the counterpoint to that is, where does Europe start sucking in more volumes from elsewhere? Again, Middle East as a source of crude, possibly even from further afield, flowing through the Middle East. Fujairah is seeing a lot of activity as this kind of nexus in an emerging new trade flow. And that's the key issue here, because that will determine what the impact of prices is from this, from the Russian embargo, is whether replacement barrels can be sourced.
The opportunity for Asian countries to absorb discounted fuel. It would appear, Peter, that the oil price cap that the G7 countries are pushing forward with is dead on arrival. It looks like it's going to have so many holes in Asia that it's Swiss cheese. There's no way to have it lock in.
Yeah, very much so, Sean. It's something that everyone wants, but unfortunately, I don't think it's going to materialize. So it's a work in progress, and let's see how it is dissected, digested, and what the outcome's going to be. I just want to make reference to that point you mentioned earlier about diesel. And the impact that is having. Naturally, we're at historic lows, and the supply side is going to be very, very tight for the consumer out there, with heating oils all across the US and naturally across Europe. So this is nearly, Sean, a perfect storm. And when you take on board all of these moving parts, I think it's going to be very, very dynamic, this market over the next, get after the midterms. But from about this time next month, I think it's going to be dynamic.
Whether we'll actually see, I mean, we're starting to see in France indications of actual shortage, i.e. you go to a gas station, they say, you know, can I have a liter of X? And they say, well, sorry, we don't have X. That whether that sort of shortage does escalate into being, you know, you pick up the pump and you go to put it in your car and there's nothing in it. Whether we get to that point is I think, obviously, as you pointed out earlier, we're still only in mid-October and supply chains do seem to be still under some duress. Let's get the survey result and give Sarah the last word this morning. Will OPEC have to cut further to hold $90 through Q1? At least amongst this group, it would indicate 2-1 yes. Your thoughts on that from an ongoing strategy point of view? Of course, we had the increase right through this year until August. Then we had a reversal of a cut in September, an insignificant 100,000. Then from November, 2 million quota. Now it's all quota nonetheless, but the quota going forward, further cuts to keep defending $90 oil. Is that viable, do you think, Sarah?
Well, really not. I don't see where they can cut and who will cut. It will be, for example, Saudi again volunteering a big cut like they did before. But other than that, I don't really see other countries pushing to get any sort of cut. And, you know, because our industry is this cyclical. So the example here is the 3 refineries that are going to start production sometime first quarter next year. I know in the Kuwait, they already started 1 unit and the 2 other units will be coming.
Which is a huge refinery in Kuwait, right? It's 600,000 barrels.
Exactly. And then you have the Jazan one and the one in Oman. So you will have, by end of first quarter next year, you will have more than enough capacity. And it is the same like happens every time. So things come at a point where it looks like you have more surplus in the market of products and then the prices go down. But the 2 other thing that really has impact is the chip industry. You know, all the car manufacturers have been very slow in providing cars. So you can see if you want to buy a car now, you have to queue in a line because they don't have enough chips. But
well, all the showrooms on Sheikh Zayed Road in Dubai are actually empty. You go in there, there's no cars available, no new ones.
It is because of the chips, but this is coming to an end as well, because as a reaction to what happened with the chips, there are many chip factories now that will be providing. So towards the end of this year, you will see many more cars coming into the market, which will add to the consumption that we lost probably during this year as well. So the reality, can OPEC cut more? For the existing countries in OPEC Plus, the only country that can chip in and do like what they did before is Saudi. For the rest, I really doubt anyone can come in and add to any of the additional cuts. Like I said, the already 2 million is a way stretched target than the reality. So there is a big gap.
Well, there's the other point, Sarah, that I welcome your thoughts on is that the massive cuts that were made during the pandemic period has had lasting impact on the health of reservoir management across the OPEC Plus countries, hence the struggle to rebuild production without serious investment of dollars. That is also the risk in this equation, isn't it?
And this year, specifically 22, we have seen 60% reduction in exploration and investment in exploration. And exploration is actually what feeds into creating new reserves that can be developed and so on the longer term. So in general, our industry as a producer is really not doing well from investment point of view. I think this year, the total investment in the upstream is like 170 billion, where we need something like 700 billion. And this will have lasting impact on how much you can produce and what capacity is there. And this is global, it's not just our industry.
That is a clear additional challenge, is the cost of just maintaining existing capacity, never mind growing new. We'll wrap it up there. Peter McGuire, as always, from Sydney, Australia. Thank you so much. Sarah Akbar from Kuwait, and also Jamie Ingram from London. Really appreciate your insights this morning. We have Brent just holding by its fingertips at $90.19 above 90, just holding there. Will it sustain this $90 floor? We'll have to see. It does feel like the momentum is still with a downward draft. Have a great day, everybody. Thank you for your half hour.
Thank you, Sean.
Thanks, Sean.
Cheers.